I've had this channel for a while, so today I'm going to lift a bit of the veil and show you what's in the process of doing a review. This is a video that will likely have people unsubscribe, as some of the things that I will say may be unpopular. This will be, though, a more candid way to look at things. I'll ask you, if you found this video interesting and useful, liking and subbing the channel helps out a lot, as I'm trying to get 100,000 subscribers. Believe it or not, there's a lot more to the review than just the review itself. I think that the word just is one of the most insidious words in any language because it overlooks all the essential steps behind the scenes. That 80 to 20 minute video that you end up watching has an entire process behind it. My process isn't perfect, it can't be, but it's always the best I can deliver within the limited time I have. In reality, the review process starts even before the review itself with something that is almost a negotiation. Most of the time, brands reach out to me via email. They propose sending equipment for the channel. Very rarely, I'm the one reaching out. Only when I find something that I find genuinely interesting. And here's how I approach things. I always maintain 100% editorial independence. This is non-negotiable. Since I handle almost everything myself, that includes recording, scripting, editing, and usually even thumbnail creation, my time is limited. For thumbnails, I occasionally collaborate with Jarno Opmeers and James Baldwin's editor. This guy is a great guy, by the way. Because of this, I have to be selective about what I cover, focusing on what's genuinely useful for the community or topics I find personally interesting. And before even considering doing a review, they have to agree to my terms. It's my channel, my rules. That is non-negotiable. Everyone needs to respect this rule set, period. This is the rule set that I send to everybody, and notice that nothing is mentioned about financials. We'll talk about that a little bit later. The thinking behind all of this is very simple. I set the terms, it's my time, my channel, and my rules. I've rejected reviews based on a principle set by the last paragraph. After all, this is a YouTube channel, it's really not an import-export business. If a company takes too long to deliver equipment, I also reject the review. I don't have time to chase people for updates. Every moment spent chasing is time taken away from work that matters, or doesn't. It's my time, I do the hell I want with it. I have also declined to work with companies that try to exert even the slightest modicum of control. In one case, politely of course, I made it clear they could fuck off.
I spoke with Mark Baum. He says to fuck off.
A few companies, including one very prominent and well-respected brand, which I won't name, have refused my conditions as well. And this is exactly how it should be. Rejections means the filter is working. It's also likely that my approach to reviews, which tends to be direct and blunt when necessary, has naturally deterred certain companies. We'll talk about monetization later on in a video, but to be clear, companies do not pay to get featured. If they did, it wouldn't be the review, it would be a paid promotion, and that's really not what I'm here to do. So let's talk about the review process. Once the equipment arrives, testing, recording, and scripting all happen more or less at the same time. I start by unboxing, inspecting, assembling, and mounting the equipment, all the while recording when I can. For filming, I usually use the Sony a6700 with a mix of lenses after I destroyed with water a Sony a6400 or the Sony ZV-10 as a second camera. I've been using Sony Alpha series for years, so I already have the gear and familiarity. Upgrading has always been easy, and I started this with Sony almost 10 years ago. Sometimes I'll also use an old slider to grab a few more cinematic shots, and because this is, recording, lighting is crucial too, but to be honest, I'm really not a videographer, and to be fair, I'm pretty lazy when it comes to the recording part. Testing is always usually straightforward at this point. The thought process for similar types of gears tends to stay consistent. And you have to remember that part of the review process is objective and part of it is subjective. The objective part is about the hard numbers and facts. The subjective part is more about the feeling or of using the product and talking about its potential use cases, all the while understanding who's the buyer for it and the reason why they may want it or may not want the product. With wheelbases, we can form generally, at least in my opinion, an impression within the first day of use, sometimes even sooner than that. You can quickly feel the overall fidelity, smooth, torque delivery, and certain nuances that are specific to a certain brand or model. However, understanding the software and its relationships with the hardware, that takes a little bit longer. When it comes to pedals though, that's where the real work begins. They're a pain in the butt to review, and that's why I aim for 60 days testing window. If a wheelbase can be truly assessed in about a week, pedals easily take 2 to 3 times more effort. They are far more mechanical in nature, with variables like spring strength, elastomer types, pressure settings, pedal positions, material difference, slack, and so on. And now with the new generation of active pedals, even the software becomes a pain in the butt. And oftentimes you do need to change the setup or change the elastomers, and that takes time over time. In my opinion, pedals are where time is gained or lost the most dramatically during a race, so they demand a much deeper level of attention and appreciation. For both wheelbases and pedals, I always aim to use the equipment as widely and deeply as time allows. That means testing across a huge variety of driving styles, so that's GT3, road cars, vintage racing, rally, and drifting, with or without the clutch. This variety ensures that I'm seeing the equipment behavior from different angles, and it highlights how it performs under real stress. More active styles of driving like toge, rallying, or drifting tend to expose issues such as play, unwanted vibration, or lack of responsiveness. By contrast, sticking only to GT3s, Formula, or hypercar driving, trying to get the subtle front-end feel, is a comparatively static method of driving. It will reveal then much less outside of that narrow scope, at least in my opinion. Then it comes the part that I hate the most: editing, even for this video. Editing is where the story is shaped, even after you've done all the scripting. Parts get cut, scenes get restructured, and sometimes I realize I didn't record enough footage in the first place. That is cool. Fun fact, Star Wars was saved in the edit room. It is true, and unfortunately, no editor, including the one for the original Star Wars, is not going to save my videos. The final part of the creation process is titles and thumbnails. This stage is absolutely critical, but also open to the most criticism because there's a weird game being played on YouTube. The way this platform works is like this. My videos are effectively fighting against everyone else for attention. So titles and thumbnails have to be grabby. They need to say what the video is clearly about, but they also need to be clickable and leave some sort of part for imagination. Veritasium has a great video on this topic, by the way, hugely recommended. So the short part of it is that titles like equipment name review, they simply do not work. And if a title doesn't get seen, it might as well not exist. You might think, I prefer the old school titles, and honestly, I think I do too, but YouTube is a numbers game, and if I use those titles, there's a chance you'll never see this video in the first place. And to be fair, reviews as a whole are a headache. The complication of the product itself, plus thinking about equipment storage, or organizing the return process when needed or when I want to, it becomes a pain in the butt. It all demands long-term planning that often stretches well beyond the 60 days I allocate for the actual review, not to talk about the next point, which will be the most contentious one, and the reason why some subscribers may decide to leave after this, which is the topic of monetization. But first, let me address this from a broader perspective. In the review space, I've noticed troubling trends. I see some members of the community raise an impossible standard for reviewers. They expect access to every single piece of equipment, preferably before launch, all at personal expense and at a level of professionalism that would rival product development itself. This is, of course, review unobtainium. It does not exist. Not even the largest review channels outside of sim racing scope and niche operate like that. I've done this comment a couple of years ago in regards to this same criticism or thereabouts that you can read on the background. And lo and behold, there's an accelerated shift in content, particularly on platforms like Instagram. It's much easier to gain views from a 30-second short where the product is used but never even discussed, or the issues it may have, and you can do it basically at zero cost to you. This creates a situation where the context is stripped away and the impact of the content is reduced to zero. Meanwhile, those of us who attempt to talk about the product in depth often find ourselves targets of accusations, some of which border on libel, but that's life on the internet. When it comes to monetization itself, there are two main ways this plays out. Either the viewer pays with their time or the viewer pays with their money. Paying with time, it means ad revenue. You watch the video, potentially see an ad or two, though I know many people use ad blockers these days. And then paying with money refers to things like membership, tips, and patronage. Ideally, I would like to see more of this, especially in conjunction with ad revenue. It really helps the channel a lot, so if you want to become a membership, you'll also be part of the credits. Then there are the affiliate links and similar options, which are sources of criticism and oftentimes strong accusations of wrongdoing. I understand where this criticism comes from, but it isn't really like that. So let's talk about how I try to address this. First and foremost, I disclose all my ties. It's this simple. The sim racing review community is probably the only niche where the main channels, including this one, and I really hope this could be said to be one of the main channels in sim racing, discloses the source of the equipment and any affiliate relationships up front. I make sure the disclosure happens early, within the first minute, with no humble bragging or attempts to position myself as some moral paragon as ways to subvert the audience. It is my job when doing a review to say what's going on. It's not an extra service provided or a favor that I'm doing to you as viewers, where I say I'm so clean and angelical while everyone else is a shill and using affiliates of somebody else would get them rich. It is my job, it's my obligation to you and the law. It needs to be disclosed, pure and simple. I also make sure that mentioning the affiliate links are mentioned with the correct priority, acknowledging them for potential sources of bias and conflicts of interest. But it needs to be done almost in passing. Mention once and clearly so it doesn't really dominate the review and it's not mentioned for you to something to click. By the end of the video, you may as well forgotten that it was there because the focus should remain on the content, not the affiliate link. I want my disclosure to be blunt, to the point, and clear before any information is even presented, so you, the viewer, can decide if the video is worth your time. Your time is valuable, and honestly, nobody likes a self-congratulatory reach-around prick. I do not take money from companies for reviews, period. Nor do I hide these financial relationships behind layers of obfuscation. Everything needs to be clear from the start, not because it's just required by law, but because it's the right thing to do. If the result of this type of disclosure will be people calling me out in the comments here or elsewhere as a shill, then counterintuitive as it may sound, that means that this disclosure has worked. You made your decision and you decided to stay away from the content, saying it's not worth it for you, therefore the disclosure worked as intended. I have done ad spots and even sponsored videos in the past, but those are always disclosed as well and of course as such. And in the case of sponsored videos, you have to remember sponsored videos are not reviews. No matter what you'll do in the video, no matter how unbiased you may think you are, and probably you are, if you receive money for a video, that is, by definition, a sponsored video. I try to avoid sponsorships or sponsored videos from sim racing equipment brands for the main type of equipment, as they represent a clear conflict of interest. I don't pretend to be perfect, and surely I am not. I try to do what I think is the best, and I try to do the best I can. I hope that this video was useful and interesting, and thanks for watching my TED Talk.